I have run into more than one mama discussing the fear of being alone. And at first I thought like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I have like this sudden urge to like think about all these worst case scenarios? It's one thing when you're alone by yourself, but it's a whole other scenario when you're alone with your child, and they could be an infant, a toddler, or, a 4-year-old. When you're alone by yourself with your child, you start sometimes going through all these like worst case scenarios. And what I advise myself to do at that time, and I advise you all, is this realistic? Like the scenario that's playing out in your head, is this a really realistic scenario? Is it a natural disaster? Is it something that could actually happen, like a fire? Or like if you live in an area that's prone to natural disasters, is this natural disaster, the scenario in your head, even realistic? Burglary, is that something that like is really happening in the area that you live in? Did you just watch like the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock news and like have all these like, you're going through all these scenarios now because of like what you just watched on the news? So when you realize like what is realistic versus what's like Hollywood, then start going through like, what would you realistically do in this kind of scenario? Like if there was a fire, like what would you do? Kind of have like in your head like what in actuality you would do. I think that peace of mind of like, okay, first thing I grab is my child. Second thing I do is grab, this. Are you going to go for the fire extinguisher, or are you just going to leave the house? Like, that's just be a realistic. Chances are, if it were me, I'm grabbing my child and I'm getting out. I'm not putting out a fire. I don't have like the most important thing to me in my life is the health and well-being of my family, and everything in our home could be replaced. We can't. So that is what I know I would do in that situation. And I don't really have to worry about any like natural disasters in the area that we live in. We don't have hurricanes, we don't have earthquakes, and we don't have tornadoes. So I don't have to worry about those. So realistically, I'm not gonna think about like, what if all of a sudden the plates, like, no, that doesn't happen in my area. And then you wanna always make sure like your fire alarm, your exit and enter into your home and out of your home is always unobstructed. And the most important thing is your baby and yourself or your children. And if you have this fear of like being alone, congratulations, you were human. This is totally normal. From the beginning of time, we've been trying to protect ourselves and our young and like our family members. So it's totally normal. Nothing is wrong with you. We might have like these heightened, like we might create these like grand scenarios in our head. Just like take a minute to breathe and just think about how realistic is this. So before you go to bed, just have like some things that I would just like recommend you doing. 5 basic steps. Like you probably already do these. Number 1, check your doors and your windows before retiring to your room. So if you live on a first floor or a second floor of a building, if you have the whole house, like check all of those doors and windows. I know like when you live in an apartment building and you're like on the 3rd or 4th floor, you're not thinking about like, checking every single window. But if that would give you a peace of mind, do that. If you feel like a deadbolt would make you feel more safe than the lock that you have on your door, put that in. $50, peace of mind. It just makes sense. 2, leave on the lights in certain spaces if that's going to make you feel more comfortable. So for me, I don't like light on anywhere, but I know for some people like night lights in certain areas. They might like leave the bathroom or the hallway light on. I personally don't do that, but if that's something that you do that. And I don't recommend night lights in the room that you sleep with the baby because that bothers their sleep. 3, place items that might make you feel more secure. So I know like before my husband's job, like when he would come home, he would leave his shoes in front of the door. He wouldn't like bring his shoes into the house because where he worked had asbestos. So he didn't want to bring any of that like asbestos stuff into the home. And so in a way that was kind of like also protecting the house, and like in a weird way, like in my head, like, oh, his shoes are there. So someone would probably know like he's home. It's not just like the mom and the baby or the mom and the child. And if you're in a same-sex relationship, like same gender relationship, you could do the same thing, like having, you know, your shoes, your partner's shoes outside, if that makes you feel comfortable. Again, using an item for protection. If you feel comfortable, if like a stuffed animal is next to you, and maybe like covering that stuffed animal so it looks like it's like a body, and you kind of feel more comfortable if like your partner is next to you, then do that. It doesn't matter. Like whatever makes you feel comfortable, do that. 4, this is if you obviously have the funds, you could invest in security. That could be, you know, security cameras, the Ring doorbell, where you basically have access to anybody who walks across your doorbell. Then you get an alert to your phone, and then you could like see who it is when your doorbell rings. So, you know, you could invest in cameras. That's 4. 5, you could get a guard dog. You can also arm yourself. The way I was raised, arming myself was really not like a way, like a thing. But I know in many parts of this country, like, you know, having guns is like normal. Or if you don't feel comfortable like arming yourself that way, you could have like pepper spray or whatever. Just remember, like a lot of the time, like this thing that you might feel like is making you feel safe, it could also have like the opposite effect of, you know, your child getting onto it. So make sure it's always like in a safe space with a lock and a code. And then the second thing about like arming yourself is just like, if you do take this out and like it does enter your home or your premises, they could also use that against you. So if they could, if they're stronger than you, they could kind of like manhandle you and take that from you. So just things to think about. For me, I would feel safer with a dog. I would feel safer with maybe like security cameras. I wouldn't feel necessarily safe with arming myself. But if you feel comfortable with that and that's something that's going to make you sleep at night, then do that. Do whatever makes you feel safe. And of course, make sure that everything is legal and safe. You want your child to be safe, you want to be safe, and if you put anything into your home, you want to just make sure you're doing everything so your child and yourself are safe. All right, well, good luck, and I wish you peace, and I wish you a good night.